Con season is upon us, and the question that I have in my mind is whether comic book collectors are going to repeat the same mistake that they've been making for the last several years that has resulted in them wasting a lot of money. Stay tuned for the video. Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. One of my missions here at the channel is to help comic book collectors be smarter about the hobby of comic book collecting. And as part of that, I share observations, epiphanies, data, and information that I think goes a long way to helping collectors think a little bit differently and hopefully figure out how they want to spend their hard-earned money. As I mentioned in the intro, con season is upon us. And there is a pattern that I've seen over the years associated with cons that results in a lot of comic book collectors wasting a lot of money. And so in this video, I want to take some time to do a deep dive into some data. I specifically want to look at variants associated with cons. I'm not talking about the raw books that might be sold at a con for $30, $40. I'm talking about when those variants are offered up on the secondary market as graded comics. There is a predictable pattern that can be seen time and time again with different types of books where these comics come out graded on the secondary market. They are super hot, people are excited to get them, and they spend a lot of good money for these books, and then the value of those books declines dramatically. And so in this video, we're going to look at several examples of that happening. And my hope is that maybe that pattern will change. At least the buying and the loss of money will change, at least for those people that take the time to watch this video. With that said, let's get to the books. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples. And the very first book that we're going to look at is right here on screen. It is Superman issue number 1. This is the Big Time Collectibles Blue Edition variant. And there were several variants that Big Time actually released. We're going to look at a couple of them. And again, the first one is this Blue Edition. Let's drill down and take a look at what we see here. There are 502 universal copies of this book out on the census, a grand total of 569. That includes 66 signature and also 1 qualified label. We are specifically going to look at the 9.8s for all of these books, and the reason being that not every one of them has a 9.9, and sometimes when there is a 9.9, there aren't a lot of them. So we're going to look at the 9.8s. Specifically, when we look at the 9.8, we see that there are 348 copies of this book out there. There have been 52 sales. So let's go ahead and click on that and take a closer look at the data. And we're specifically going to look mostly at the graphs. I think the graphs are easier for people to be able to see and also get a feel for the patterns that we are going to see from book to book versus looking at individual transactions. So when we look at the sold price for Superman issue number 1, Blue, what we see is that this book was selling in March of 23 for $250.83. It reached a low point in December of 23 of $107.99. We can see a little bit of a rebound here as the book finished out 2024. I don't think that there have been any sales in 25, but the last sale again appears to be in November of 24, and it was actually a fixed sale on eBay. So this book essentially fell off pretty quickly, right? From March to August, it lost value. And then again, the total drop was again in December of 07. Overall, this book, if you look at where it started at $250.83 and where it finished, at least with the last sale at $150, it has lost 40% of its value. And thankfully, it actually recovered a little bit as it went from March of 2024 to where it finished in November. It recovered just a little bit, because I want to say that the drop off was actually bigger than that. if you had just looked at the 107 number, right, which was the sale back here in December. I think that was about a 57% loss in value, but the recovery kind of helped this book out. So that's the first example that I wanted to look at. I want to backtrack again because I do want to look at another one of these Superman comics, because I was at the con and I remember seeing the big sign with a lot of these Superman logo books up there. So these were the first books that kind of came to mind when I thought about doing this video. So we're going to look at a second one, specifically Superman issue number 4. And this is the purple variant. Let's go ahead and take a look at the data for this one. There are 343 universal blue labels out there, a grand total of 355. And again, looking at the 9.8, the census count on that is 291, and there have been 68 sales of this book. Going to go ahead and click on it and drill into the numbers here. And you can see that this one kind of sputtered along for a little bit, right? It came out, and the first sale here that we have a record of is 101.34, and it kind of petered along for a little while, dropped off to $42 by December. So from June to December, it lost a fair amount of its value. It recovered a little bit, bounced up in February of 24 to 135, dropped off again, kind of petered along for a little while. It had a high water mark. This is the high mark for this book, was 199. So 199, and then it dropped to $40 in January of this year. My guess is that if there is a sale of the last book that we looked at, specifically Superman 1, my guess is that its value will also come down from that 150 to something else. That's my guess. Probably similar to what we see here. Finished 24 high, but in the new year it dropped off even more. That's my guess for what would happen with Superman 1, just based upon what we are seeing for Superman 4. But when you look at this one again, 101.34 down to $40, it has lost 60.5% of its value since release. So let's go ahead and look at another example. I want to move away from the Superman logos, and I want to move to another book. I want to say that I saw this book at a con, but I don't want to speak out of turn. This is a cool book just in general, in my opinion. I mean, all of them are cool if I'm being completely honest, but I don't know if I would pay hundreds of dollars for them, just being honest. This one I want to look at. This is Giant Size X-Men 1. This is a facsimile foil that dropped in 2023. And I personally think that this one is mislabeled, because here it says it's a key issue. In my opinion, the facsimile is not a key issue. The facsimile is a facsimile of a key issue, but in and of itself, I don't think that it is a key issue in any way, shape, or form, especially when it came out in 2023. The ink is still wet. The ink's still wet on this. So let's look at this one. There are 479 universal copies out there, a grand total of 589 overall. There's a lot of signatures, a lot of signature series, 110 copies. But let's look at the 9.8. There are 472 on the census at a 9.8, and there have been 43 sales of this book. We're going to go ahead and click on this. I'm going to toggle that off, blow this up so you guys can see it a little bit. And again, another book that just kind of petered along, but this one has petered and consistently lost value. I think it's safe to say that this book originally was selling in October of 23 for $149.99. It had a fall off to $75 by January. So from October of 23 to January, it had dropped. It had a little bit of a rebound of was 30 some odd dollars, let's just say, up to $109.99, another drop off. And it has finished in February of this year of 2025, finished at $55.95. $55.95. This book, since its first sale, has lost 63% of its value. And in fact, if you take it a step further, you look over here in February, the 23rd of February 25, a copy of this at a 9.8 was purchased on eBay for $27. That is a smoking deal unless you were somebody that bought it for $149 back in October of 23. All right. So I wanted to, my goal here is to try to look at different types of books, not just ones that come from retailers, but ones that come from other sources as well, which is why I wanted to kind of look at this giant size facsimile foil. So let's go ahead and look at another book. This is a cool one. I remember seeing this one at the con. And there were actually a couple of these at the con that were just, they were singing to me. They were singing to me. No doubt about it. Let me see if I can find it. This is Transformers issue #1. This one came out at New York Comic Con 2023. This is a foil edition. Gonna go ahead and click on this one and take a look at it. There are only 149, so a smaller census for these. 149 universal, a total of 221 out there, which includes 77 signatures and 1 verified copy. And again, we are specifically going to look at the 9.8s, 124 at a 9.8 on the census and 22 sales. So let's go ahead and look at that and see what we see here. Blow that up a little bit. This book was originally selling for $249.99 in October of 23, and look at that fall off. By December, it had dropped to $116.09. A little bit of a recovery, a little bit of some petering, dropped off again to a low of $115 by June of 24. Little bit of recovery, and ultimately finished in August of 24. That was the last sale. Yeah, August of 24, last sale. $130. This one has lost 48% of its value. 48% of its value. I don't have probably the best data here because this was a best offer. I didn't look that up, but we can assume that it wasn't 48%. Let's just assume that this one sold for not a whole lot of money there. All right. But again, there is definitely a pattern here. These books come out, they are super hot. They have some sales success, right? Some people are buying these on the secondary market, and then there is a fall off. Sometimes there's a little bit of recovery, but generally, I mean, you're seeing 40%, 60.5, 63%, 48%. These are meaningful fall offs in value, if you ask me. Let's go ahead and take a look at one more. This is Catwoman issue #1. And again, trying to look at different types of these foils, these con variants, if you will. This one is a cool one. I think I saw this one. This is a gorgeous cover, no matter how you slice it. This is Catwoman 51. This one is from Comic Corner. It's the foil edition. And again, this one came out in 23. So let's go ahead and look at this. There are fewer of these out there because part of it is, well, do they retain their value if there are few of them out there, right? Not so much. 66 universal blue labels, a total of 131 overall, which includes 65 signature. 9.8, there are 60 on the census, and there have been 10 sales. So not a whole lot of sales activity, not a whole lot of these trading hands. But again, same type of pattern here. We see the book came out in October of 23. $127.50 was the sales price. We see it drop down to $94.99 by November. A little bit of a rebound, actually higher than its initial price, comes up to basically $150, and then there's a fall off to $75 again, and the next sale is at $89. So the book went from $127.50 to $89. It has lost 30% of its value. 30% of its value has been lost over what is that, a year period? Kind of, sort of 2 years, I think. No, a year, about a year. So a healthy amount of value has been lost overall. When you look at these books, the average just across these 5 books, 48.3%. 48.3% overall. And if you were to factor in the first book that we looked at, if we go back and we look at that first book, it had a little bit of recovery at the very end, right? But if you look at its lowest point, and I think that was 107.99, if you factor that in and exclude the rebound from just that book alone, the overall loss is 52% for all 5 books combined, right? If you factored that in. So again, this appears to be a waste of money. So hopefully you saw what I was trying to describe in that data, that predictable pattern of these books coming out, being super hot, people that could not get them at the con in person, buy them on the secondary market, and the value of those books falls off dramatically. As part of this, I looked at a lot of books. I only showed a handful just because of the length of going into all of those books, but the pattern is seen time and time again. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at foils from 2023 or books from 2022, 2021, or even last year for that matter, the pattern seems to be fairly predictable. And the question is, what do you do about that? If it were me, if there was a book that came out at a con and I was unable to get a raw copy of that book at the con, and I had to go to the secondary market and I really wanted that 9.8 or whatever it happens to be, I honestly would wait. I would wait 6 months, I would wait a year, and I would track the value of that book. And at the 6 month or the 1 year mark, if I find that I still wanted that book after all that time, I would then buy it. By doing that, you're saving yourself, as I stated in the video, roughly 50% of your money. You're able to get it 50% cheaper, if not greater, right, depending upon what you're going after, by simply waiting a period of time and allowing the FOMO to wash itself out of the system. That potentially would be how I would approach it. My guess, though, is that a lot of folks won't really want those books if they wait that long, because FOMO is real. The fear of missing out is a great motivator that gets you to come up off of that money when that potentially isn't the best thing for you. With that said, I want to wrap this video up. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do it on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
Big city dreams, but that's a small town thing. I thought the big city life was the only way you could be crowned king.